It's been quite an eventful year for the entire world, as we are constantly keeping up with a new wave of unprecedented news every day. And we can shut off the news for moments at a time, but for the people providing that information to us, that's not usually an option. Add to that being an Armenian within the last 12 months. Our global pulse collectively felt the pain of the fall of 2020. Though it's not easy, being an informant on these events is incredibly powerful and a key factor in enacting change. That's why today, we are going behind the scenes in the newsroom with Araksya Karapetyan. I'm Krista Marina Apardian.
And I'm Haig Minasyan.
And you're listening to Haitug Talks,
the official podcast of the AYF West.
A cousin of Armenians talking in the world.
Araksya Karapetyan co-anchors Good Day LA's early newscast from 5 to 7 a.m. with Tony McEwing and Good Day LA from 7 to 10 a.m. She joined the Fox 11 team in March of 2012. But a native of Armenia, Karapetyan moved to the U.S. when she was just 7 years old. A devastating earthquake, a brewing conflict with Azerbaijan, and the demise of the Soviet Union all contributed to her family's decision to leave their homeland. She grew up in Palos Verdes Estates and has a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations and Broadcast Journalism from Syracuse University's S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications. Karapetyan worked as a general assignment reporter and fill-in host at Coin TV in Portland, Oregon. Prior to that, she was a reporter, anchor, and producer at KIDK TV in Idaho Falls. Karapetyan began her television career as an intern at KABC TV in Los Angeles and KFI 640 AM radio in Burbank. Her interest in journalism sparked when she went back for a summer visit to Armenia. She decided to spend her time there not by being a tourist, but by exploring to see what everyday life was like for the majority. Well, Araksya, thank you so much for coming. You are a force both in the media world and in the Armenian community, someone that many of us look up to, at least I can speak for myself, and I'm sure many other Armenians. And thank you so much for coming. We're so excited to chat with you. So today, Araksya, you are an anchor woman for KTTV Fox 11's Good Day LA. What was your journalistic journey like from Syracuse University up until today?
Well, I will give you the Cliff Note version of it. I've told this story so many times that hearing myself talk about it, I'm like, is this really interesting? But I have to remind myself that for those who haven't heard the story, it is interesting. And it's also a journey that not many people are familiar with when it comes to getting into this business. So I often say when I graduated from Syracuse University, and this is very true, the day of my graduation, I sat there thinking, what am I going to do? I don't really know if I want to get into this field. Many of the people I went to school with were very ambitious and competitive, and they'd already interned at many places. They already had jobs lined up, and I had done none of those things. And so I wasn't really sure if this was something I wanted to pursue. Oftentimes, when you're in school, what you're doing and learning is very different from reality. And what I was doing and learning just wasn't really inspiring me. It wasn't really, I didn't have that passion for it. So that summer after graduating, I went to Armenia. It was 2006. I just wanted to go, just kind of clear my head. And while I was there, I grabbed a camcorder that we had, which sounds silly now. Who has a camcorder?
Not your iPhone?
Yeah, right. I didn't have that. I did not have that then. I had a flip phone. I had a flip phone. So yes, I grabbed the camcorder and it started kind of as like a hobby almost. I was going around town and talking to people and just kind of getting to know them and their stories, like the lady who sold the sunflower seeds at the park. And, she told me the story of how she was still living in a domek all these years later. She raised her children in one, and selling sunflower seeds was the only income that she had. And it was just really interesting and fascinating, and just a sense of the reality that sometimes when you're a tourist, I guess I was considering myself one because I hadn't lived there since I was a child, you get a false sense of what reality is when you're just off whining and dining and visiting sites. You don't know what real people are going through. So it was interesting for me to do this. And then I visited places like an elderly home and a school and psychiatric ward, which was part of the elderly home, which was odd. But anyway, I did these like activities and have all these tapes still. We were just talking about being a hoarder. I have these like mini DVC Pro tapes that one day I hope to look over and I don't know, maybe I'll do something with. But that experience, that really just ignited the passion that I was lacking. And I was so excited to finally feel what I was looking to feel. So I came back home to LA and immediately I started to intern at I went from 0 internships to 3 or 4. And I quickly put a tape together because this is what you do when you're in this business. You put a resume reel, a tape together to show, what you look like on camera, how you sound and all that. I put that together and I just kind of sent it off blindly to all of these small towns, because when you start in this business, you start in a small place, places you've never been, have never maybe even heard of, places you never would probably go. And wherever, they take an interest, you just go, random places, South Dakota, North Dakota, El Paso, that you've heard of. But Idaho Falls is where I went, and I went blindly. I packed up my car, I accepted a job, I didn't have a place to live, I had no idea what Idaho Falls was like, and I just went.
Idaho? That's crazy.
Yeah,
from California.
As I'm driving, I'm like, okay, we definitely left the city.
We've committed.
A lot of cows, a lot of fields. What is going on? So I rolled into town and had to find a place to live and, get acclimated, and started off there in Idaho Falls, market 182 at the time. So the higher the number, the smaller the city. LA is number 2, New York is number 1. I was in 182. And then the idea is you work your way up, you work backwards,
Yeah.
So did that make sense? You work backwards. Yes.
I guess.
Yes, it did. So
were you the only Armenian in Idaho? I mean, I feel like you're the lone Armenian out there.
I was. And my news director at the time asked me if I'd considered changing my name or if I would consider changing my name,
Wow.
to which I was very offended.
Yeah.
I was very angry that he even posed that question. And I said, no, I'm not changing my name. He suggested Roxy Carpy and some other crazy things. I know. I said, you don't understand. If I change my name, then my last name clearly indicates that I'm Armenian.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very important for me and my identity. And I had this very passionate response and it was very intense. And he's like, okay, just keep your name. I said, listen, people will learn to say it. It's not as intimidating as it looks. I promise you they'll get it. And so they did. Yeah. And let me just fast forward and tell you, when I did leave Idaho Falls 2.5 years later, people knew my name very well. They pronounced it perfectly. In fact, I got an email a month before I left, and a woman had a baby, and she named her Araksya.
No way.
Non-Armenian?
Not Armenian.
Oh my
no.
gosh.
That's awesome.
I know. So there's an Araksya somewhere in Idaho Falls, and people didn't really know what Armenia was, where I was from, and it was kind of nice to, in a way, teach people and give them this exposure they otherwise would never have had with an Armenian.
Mm-hmm.
And I made some great friends, great memories. It was a lot of work. You're making $18,000 a year. You definitely need the support of your family if you're fortunate enough to have that to sustain some type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, you do everything. On the weekend, I was reporting, being the shooting my own stuff, editing, writing my own stuff, producing the newscast, anchoring the newscast. So you do all of it. So it's an amazing learning experience and really beneficial, because when you know how everyone else does their job, you know what it takes for them to do their job, for you to do your job, if it makes you a better, well-rounded employee, I believe. So from there, I jumped to Portland, Oregon, which was amazing.
Yeah.
It was a big city. So Portland at the time was ranked 50. So I went from 180 to 50. So that was a really nice size jump and a nice size jump. So that was great. I mean, Portland was fun. Great memories there. I reported only. I never anchored while I was there. So most of the time I was standing outside in the rain, and that's my life, in a North Face jacket, getting rained on. But it was great. I, also covered some big important stories there for 9 months. I was leading the newscast every single day with this little boy who's gone missing and who still is missing, named Kyron Horman. And so I had to come up with, ways to advance the story and tell the story. It was a really interesting and beneficial experience to just, to own a big story like that, to lead the newscast like that for so many months, to find clever and creative ways to tell the story of something that was important for that community. And so following 2 years there, I wanted to come back home. This is where, I grew up and my family is, and I was kind of torn. I had some amazing opportunities in different places. New York and LA came down to kind of being the two that I was considering. I made a list. I have that list somewhere. Speaking of hoarding, right? I have that list somewhere in a box of memories where it was the pros and the cons. Why go to New York? Why go to LA? And I ended up coming here because it wasn't important for me to be around my family at this point and have them actually see what it is that I was doing. I don't think they quite ever really understood until they were able to physically see.
Yeah.
And so I came back for that, and a great decision. That was 9 years ago that I've started. So that kind of brings me here to Fox 11, and immediately after starting here, they gave me an opportunity to fill in on the anchor desk, and I did that and continued to do that. And then thankfully, it ended up landing me the spot on the morning show, which is amazing.
Wow.
Well, you mentioned two things that I think are great and very important, especially from the Armenian community that we grew up here in California, is get out for a little bit, like go to another city in the country, get out of the Armenian community, see what the rest of the country is like. So I like that. And two, I always tell people, like, we can't just be within our community all the time. Who's going to tell our Odar American friends about Armenia? So you have to go share the good news and everything. So I think that entire experience of yours probably, like you said, gave you made you well-rounded and shaped your experience. Me going to school in Philly alone was an experience in itself, just living away from home and working in a different environment with different people. So it makes sense, It
is a great experience, although I don't want my kids when they grow up to leave me.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure your parents felt the same way. I know my parents were like, why are you going to Philadelphia? It's okay.
I know.
But we come back, we come back.
Of course. They'll make a pros and cons list, and they'll choose to stay near you, of course.
Yeah, well, it's also based on your personality. I just have one of those personalities, and I've always been this way, where I go where the unknown, I chase the unknown, and the action is what entices me, and wherever something's happening, that's where I want to be. And I can't just sit by and allow other people to have experiences and then me just observe. I want to be doing the things that others are taking part in, and just the curiosity factor has just been something that's in my DNA. So it makes sense that this is what I ended up doing in many ways.
Well, so you went back to Gyumri. When you went back to Armenia, did you go to Gyumri, or was it just Yerevan? Or awesome. I'm also Gyumretsi, which is why I said it. Yeah, but my family came over like 100 years ago, like before the genocide, like a long time ago. They're part of this.
So have you been?
I went back to Armenia, and I think what you were saying earlier about not being necessarily having the tourist experience is very important. I did Birthright Armenia for like a year, and I got to spend some time in Gyumri. I got to spend some time in Yerevan, and I don't know if you know about Birthright Armenia, but you get to go and work and live with the family there and try to have a more genuine experience. And I think that's so important. And Krista did AYF Youth Corps, and there you also go live in the villages and run summer camps.
With the kids there, it was amazing.
Yeah, to have that kind of experience it's more genuine, and you really do get that valuable perspective of what things are actually like out there. But so how old were you when you left Armenia?
7.
7 years. So you were
7 and a half.
Because my family never experienced the 90s, the dark days. They say something like that.
When we came, it was 1990, so it was just like right then where
before it got really bad.
Happened, the war was beginning, communism was falling apart. So,
insane time. I always commend those Armenians. I'm like, you went through some. They call it the dark days for a reason, but that was a crazy time. And I mean, you went. Did you experience the earthquake?
I did.
Oh my
Yes, I
God.
did. I experienced an earthquake, and when I say literally the dark days, I went to first grade in a domig, and I
Yeah,
did my
yeah.
homework under candlelight. There was only electricity for a couple of hours, only running water a few hours. So I remember that. I remember that very well. I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and then you come to California where we have a quake every other month, and it probably just
I
brings
know.
back the
I
PTSD,
know.
man.
That's what it is.
It's
Earthquakes petrify me, yet here I am.
It's so
Yeah.
bad. And I don't know if 2006, it wasn't probably that long, let's say 10, 15 years since. So it's definitely, Armenia's improved a lot since then, but Gyumri is still pretty rough. I mean, they haven't really fixed it up as much as we'd like it to be fixed up after 20, 30 years now.
Right, right. Well, it was shocking for me to be back there in 2006 to see people still living in domings in certain parts
Yeah.
of town where you would drive by and places were still in rubble as if the
I
earthquake
know.
had just happened. So I don't know. I think that has improved more so than it was back
Yeah.
then. Obviously, I don't know, but yes, Yerevan is definitely a different world than Gyumri. But Gyumri, I have a special place in my
Yeah.
heart for. It just it's home for me. I also spent a great deal of time in Yerevan because both of my family, my father's and mother's side is from Gyumri, but when my mother got accepted to the university, my mother's side of the family moved to Yerevan.
Mm.
So my grandparents were in Yerevan, and I was always going back and forth. In fact, I was enrolled in first grade in both Yerevan and in Gyumri. It was right around the time we were getting ready to come to America, so it was a crazy
Yeah.
time, and I was going back and forth, and I was getting like horrible grades because I didn't know what was going on.
No one can blame you. No one
But
can blame you.
Was 2006
yeah,
was 2006 the last time you went, or have you gone back
yes,
since? Oh damn, you haven't
no.
been back since.
With this job,
Yeah, it's
because
tough.
right after that I got to, started pursuing the career. First of all, you don't really have a lot of time off. Second of all, you're kind of in the zone of like trying to move up the ladder and just super focused.
Yeah.
And so that brought me to LA. And then when I came, I got married and then had kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go actually right before I had my second daughter, but the doctor told me she recommended I didn't. But I had this huge trip planned, and we were going to go in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to go with my grandfather, who is 90, and my sister, who when we moved, she was only 9 months old. And it was going to be very symbolic, like going back together here. She was an attorney, and she was only 9 months when she'd left Armenia. So here we are going back with our grandfather, who took us out of that country.
Mm-hmm.
And now I had this whole beautiful image and vision in my mind. And then I had just gotten pregnant with my second Sona, and the doctor really recommended I didn't travel. And I was just so upset because everyone else went, and
Yeah.
it was my idea, and I stayed back.
Aw. Well, hopefully you'll make up for it.
Well, hopefully
I'm
you'll
sure.
be going back soon. But you'll probably go in the next few years. I'm sure you want to take the
Yeah,
kids there
make
and
up
see.
for
I hope
it.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Araksya, you and your family immigrated here to begin this new life in the States. What was that adjustment like? Is it something you remember clearly?
I do. I adjusted very quickly. When you're young, first of all, you pick up the language quickly. You acclimate at a much faster pace. To me, and I don't have a time frame, but I feel as though within a couple of weeks, I swear I was speaking English. Like it just like I don't have a memory of struggling to learn English. It just kind of happened. The first day of school, when they made me enroll in ESL, I was so upset by that. And my goal became, I'm coming out of this ESL class. I do not want to be doing this ESL class. And so it happened quickly. And then again, going back to just how your personality is, I wanted to be like involved in everything and a part of everything. And so I just immersed myself in all of that and adjusted pretty well. And when you're younger, I never had those moments like, oh, why am I having dolma for lunch and everyone's having pizza or whatever. I never had those types of moments because I kind of took the best of both worlds. And
Mm-hmm.
if I felt like having dolma, I had dolma. And if I wanted pizza or whatever, a spaghetti dish that the cafeteria was offering, that's what I ate that day. And I think I've carried that throughout my life. It's kind of nice. You have the best of both worlds. So take the best of whichever, and but don't lose who you are and where you come from. And I think I've hung on to that pretty well. I will tell you though, when I think about my kids they don't have that connection that I do, right, to Hayastan. I do kind of get worried or maybe just frustrated and concerned that they're not going to have that pull that I do. But what can I do, right? So I have to just push harder and fight harder to make sure that I instill their love for having Armenian roots. It's just harder work. It's more challenging, but it's something that's very important for me.
Well, it's part of the diasporan experience. We all go through that. But I mean, I think you're doing great by just leading through example, right? They see their mom caring about these issues and doing all these things. They'll also want to, continue to do that kind of stuff. They'll look up to you in that way. So
Certainly. And it's interesting you mentioned language because you said you were 7 when you moved here, right? We had an episode with, we had an episode with Araksya Karapetyan where we learned that learning a new language is easiest up until the age of 9. And so if you do so before then, I guess it's easier. So it was perfect timing, Araksya. It was great timing.
Yes. I wish my Russian though, because I spoke Russian at the time.
Mm-hmm.
My kindergarten teacher was Russian and I spoke Russian in school, but when we came here, I focused on English and, Russian kind of has become very, very, very rusty. Although so many words that I use every day when I'm thinking I'm speaking Armenian are Russian anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's all mixed nowadays.
Well, so what did your parents do? They weren't in the journalism or anything related
Media
to what
space.
you were interested in, huh?
Actually, my father's father was the editor of a newspaper.
Oh, there
and
you
so
go.
he was involved in journalism in some way. He passed away, though, when I was, I want to say like 5. I remember him very well, though. But I don't think that's where that interest comes from, really. I think it just really just goes back to my curiosity for people, just being a people person. Also I consider myself relatively open-minded, and certainly this job has forced me to be even more open-minded because you come across so many types of people and so many situations and things you maybe otherwise wouldn't. So it forces you to see many sides to things, experience many different experiences you otherwise would not. And I think it's, I embrace that. I like that. I want to talk to someone who I don't agree with. I want to talk to someone who is passionate about something completely different from myself and learn, because every day is a learning experience. Every job has its routine and some of that mundane type of thing, right? We all have that in whatever job you're in. But this job is just somewhere where I always feel like I'm growing and learning, and also, trying to hone my own skills of whether it's being a better listener, conducting an interview better, writing better, reading better, whatever it is, there's always room to improve. And I really relish that. That's something that, in order to be the best you can be of your version of the best you can be for yourself, you have to always push yourself and not just get comfortable.
Definitely.
No, I can totally relate. No, conducting this podcast is definitely not one of my strengths, but it was kind of what you're saying, is doing something different and pushing myself to improve on things that I'm not used to doing. But I also, like you're saying, I really enjoy getting to talk to people who are experts in something else, or just getting the opportunity to talk to all these awesome Armenians. It's one of the fun parts about this. So I'm sure you experienced that as well, getting to talk to all these interesting people in our community here and there.
Yeah, and that hunger to continue learning and for growth is something I think everyone can learn from. Speaking of that, the passion that you mentioned, Araksya, you're very vocal about Armenian causes. So I'm curious, if you wanted to run an Armenian story, how does that process work? You usually pitch a story and then it goes from there?
I'll pitch a story and usually they're very open to it. I don't really have to fight for it. Or I just kind of do it and I'm like, oh, I just did this here.
Like, well, it's happening, so.
Right. I'm just like, oh yeah, by the way, I put this story together last night. So you guys want it this morning? And they're usually like, oh, okay, sure. So yeah, no, I'm very lucky to work at a place where, I don't have to, it's not a struggle in that sense. But then it becomes the pressure I put on myself, right? Because then I feel like I need to tell this, or I should tell this, or this is a good opportunity to open people up to whatever's happening in this community. And it's almost like this cycle I've created where now I'm just kind of like constantly producing that. And it's great because the outcome is wonderful, but it's also extra on top of extra.
Right. That builds up. Yeah.
And that really, really started with the war. Like, I was doing things here and there, and of course, like participating in events. And if I was participating in an event, I was highlighting what I was participating in. But it really took a different turn in the past several months, where I started producing much more content.
Well, I was actually going to ask that, Araksya, because it seems like over the past year, whether it's you or other Armenian news anchors or whatever, we've been hearing more about Armenian news or Armenian American issues in the news. And I was wondering what that catalyst was. And you're saying it was the Artsakh War.
I would say that's definitely yes, because it was something that was happening so far away. Yet it became a local story. It became a local story simply by volunteers or people doing things here in the community. So they were doing something where you could show it. Also, of course, things like when you go out there and block a freeway, you're going to get news coverage.
Right.
So,
good to know.
You know,
Noted.
the community is, you know, plays a role. You're responsible for doing things where you warrant coverage, and you get the coverage.
Yeah. Did you ever experience during that time or previously pushback from, you know, viewers or peers? It seems like the network was generally supportive.
Yes, supportive, but also in the beginning, kind of not aware of exactly what's happening and why it's happening. So this was definitely a moment where people got a history lesson, people got a lesson on geopolitics, people got way more than they ever expected to get. And you have to remember, we're in local news, so here we're not really trained or equipped to cover a story like that, right? We're used to like covering something that cycles through the news cycle in 24 hours and it's gone and you move on to the next thing. Or it's not a big deal if you show the video that maybe was not exactly the right video, but it was okay. In this case, every word mattered, every video mattered, everything was so sensitive, and you couldn't make these mistakes. Like, these types of mistakes are not allowed. So it was a lot of pressure on me to make sure that I had to put out some fires, you know, like I did, and it was hard. And I was always like nervous when we were about to run an Armenian story, because like, oh my gosh, what are they going to show? What's the wording going to be? Something that I hadn't done myself, but it was getting covered. So that was challenging and hard. But let me tell you, you know, we should all be proud, because you have this community here in Los Angeles who can perfectly say Artsakh, and they do a pretty good job of saying it. And you know, just has a better understanding of what the Armenian community is about. It's not just on April 24th with the Armenian genocide, which is something people here in LA were used to.
Right.
We became more than that.
As a viewer as well, Araksya, I can say that it brings comfort to see coverage of it, especially when, you know, as a people, we weren't feeling heard, especially, you know, in the States. So it definitely brings comfort to see that coverage as a viewer. So
it meant a lot. Yeah,
definitely.
No, I appreciate that. And you know what? I think that the other thing is that it was such a negative story that in order to, this is how I approached it. I wasn't doing these stories for the Armenian community. The Armenian community already knows what's going on. They're aware of all that. I have to make the story interesting and make people care who are not Armenian. I have to make the story matter for people who otherwise would just tune it out, right? So I had to find ways to tell the story and to kind of focus on the positive aspects of people in this community doing positive things, and using that as a way to get into telling the other part of the story. So it was challenging, but a good challenge. But yes, it wasn't easy in that sense. But my audience was everyone else. It wasn't for the Armenian community.
Yeah.
Because if that was just my audience, then I did a disservice. Then I wasn't really doing my job. I had to get out there and make others care and appreciate it. And it was so rewarding to have people who were not Armenian send me messages or emails or write things or share things and say, hey, like, I had no idea. Well, thank you for, you know, exposing me to this. That is the moment where you feel like all that hard work is worth it.
Well, I'm sure all your coworkers and your colleagues know all this Armenian facts and history now. I know at my work I've talked so much about Armenia that they're all historians and they know everything that they're supposed to know. But I mean, did it ever feel like it was too much Armenian news, or was it like maybe a inward feeling? You're like, am I doing too much of this,
Yes.
yeah? But I feel like we gotta still do it, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, but also have to do it in a way where you leave people wanting more, or you're not just like cramming it down their throat, you know, like
Yeah,
balancing it out, sprinkling it here and there. Especially now, I mean, there's so much to still talk about, obviously,
Yeah.
but that heat of the war moment has passed in many ways, right? So now you have a little bit more room to do it in a different
yeah.
way and not with that intensity.
Well, I'm also thinking it might feel like it's a lot of Armenian news because, especially for us Armenian Americans, we tend to see most of your work when it does come, related to Armenian issues. But I'm sure if we looked at your entire cycle of news and anchor work, it's pretty balanced. But it's been a crazy year. I mean, I can say the news in general can be kind of disheartening because it's a lot of intense stuff going on around the world. So, but we get to take breaks as viewers. We can turn off the news if we want, but you have to be always following current events and be involved and following everything that's happening. And I'll say this, during the war, I had a hard time focusing on my own job. Like I felt paralyzed at times. During those months of the war, did it affect your experience as an anchor?
Oh my gosh.
Everything.
Honestly, you said that perfectly. Paralyzed is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I would say numb, but paralyzed is good. That was probably the hardest experience of my life. Because for 44 days, I guess, and afterwards as well, I just had horrible anxiety. Like every moment I woke up in the middle of the night, I was always looking at my phone like everyone else.
Same.
And every time I was about to look at my phone, I was like, oh God, like what am I going to see right now? Right? Like you just got this sick feeling. I just never felt well. Like I felt in the first week, I lost 8 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm telling you that because I really just like couldn't eat
Same.
at all. Like it hit me so hard. It was hard, and I came and I started doing stories, but at the same time, that's just one story out of the 5 hours that I'm on TV, right? So you're covering other stories, and you can't let that feeling consume you because then it impacts your performance. But it was hard for me to sit there and smile and laugh or talk about these like silly stories compared to what was happening, these frivolous stories. It made me that also made me feel sick.
Yeah.
And then the pressure of like, okay, what do I need to do, or what story can I do, and how am I going to do this? It's like I had to do it on my own, and I was working around the clock. I was doing my job here, and then going home and putting pieces together, and doing Zooms, and then writing the story, and then in my closet on an app tracking my voice to send to an editor, to then on FaceTime edit the story so that it could air the next morning. Like it was insane. And at the same time, I'm a mom of 2. And so, it's like, you guys keep it down. I'll be right back. I'm like, okay, let's track this again. I'm working on these important things, and I have to also pay attention to my kids. And then you have the whole mom guilt thing, which is a whole different thing that like we won't go into, but the balance of that. But at the same time, I will say it was then when I started to really focus that I also in a way started to feel better. I started to also feel better because I felt like I had a purpose and I was doing something. I was doing what I could do. Some people like went out to march and protest. That was what they had to do. Some people were active on social media and bringing awareness. That was what they had to do. Some people went back to Armenia and volunteered. Everyone had a role to play, right? And so my role was to produce content and to do that. So that I will say was an awakening in a way, because it also brought back that passion that first, I felt for becoming a journalist, which sometimes you forget. And when you're doing something that really matters and is important to people and they're relying on you, you realize what a bigger role you have to play. So that was nice. But on a whole different thing, on a whole same topic, but kind of in a different way, just the news can be depressing. There's always like deaths and murders and shootings and
COVID
accidents,
and
fires,
Yeah.
and it does weigh on you, and it's hard. And anything to do with kids, like it stays with me all day. It stays with me all day and for days to come. But I take it very hard. And sometimes like I just have visions of just horrible things happening all the time. Because it's what I'm surrounded in. So that's not good. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's honest. It's an important, aspect of your job. How do you avoid that disaster fatigue? Do you have certain things you do to like try to decompress a little bit?
Have a glass of wine or two.
Yeah.
No, kidding, not kidding. But no, you just you have to remind yourself that everything else happening in the world is not always a disaster.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not all bad. It's not all bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and really just spending time with my family and kids, that really just helps me kind of calm down. I go home to these like amazing kids, and they're just like so innocent, and they see the world in such a wonderful way. So then you kind of shut off the crazy, horrible part of life, and you focus on the beauty of life and the purity of life and the innocence of life. Really, they've helped me really maintain that balance and have hope for humanity. Kids did.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I identified with something you said earlier, though, with your outlet, having that purpose with your work kind of helped with that anxiety and guilt with what was going on. I completely agree, because we were starting this podcast around the same time the war started, so we pushed back the whole first season and did an entire series on Artsakh. And whether it was that or going to the protests or in general, that helped with what's within my control, and am I doing my 100%, and that at least helped with that anxiety. But the same way, I was up till 3 a.m. checking Twitter and looking for updates. It was a tough 4 months.
That's another aspect of it nowadays, is that with like new media, it's harder to shut it off, because you don't just have to turn off the TV and then you're mentally checked out. It's on our phones. We get notifications.
Instagram, it's all the social medias.
Yeah, it makes it harder to.
Oh, I will tell you guys, since the new year, my resolution sort of is to not be socially engaged on weekends. So like Friday afternoonish, sometimes evening, I stop posting and looking. Not just posting, but also just looking. I don't look until Monday morning. And at first it was kind of like, I felt like I was missing out on what's happening in the world. Like, I don't know, I told a couple of my friends, I was like, if any disaster is major and happens, can you call me and just let me know?
Yeah.
Because you feel like when you don't have that social media connection, you're missing out on everything, and that's not the case. And so some Mondays I would pick up my phone, and I was like, okay, let me see what I missed out on. And I was like, oh, nothing really happened. Okay. So it was, and it was also hard, and it still is, because sometimes you guys all do this. You pick up your phone without even thinking. It's just habit. You just click on the Instagram or Facebook icon. Like, it's just a part of your, you're making coffee, and while it's getting made, you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna.
Instinctual.
Why do we do that? Why do we do that? So sometimes when that happens on the weekend, I click it and I realize I click it and I quickly come out of it, because I don't even want to go down that path. So it's taken really a lot of discipline, but I will tell you, it's mentally so it's just cleansing. I feel better. I'm more present at home on the weekend and just focused on life as it's happening, rather than trying to keep up with what's happening. It's just a lot of work. It's exhausting.
Oh, cool.
Certainly.
We had a few friends who did no social media for Lent, and they were just telling me it made them feel so much better. They had to adjust, but imagine cutting it out for like a month. They said the same thing. You felt freer and cleansed and everything. So, but speaking of social media, things have changed, especially in the new age of media and even broadcast journalism. I was curious, how has things changed in the last few years for KTTV or for you in terms of adjusting to the new social media age? What are you guys doing differently now?
Social media has just become such a big part of the job. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. If I didn't have Google while I'm at work on the air, where I'm looking things up, or even while something's happening, getting more information about it, I'm like, how would I do this job? Like, seriously, back in the day, they would come and they would read the newspaper, and that would be their prep before they got on the air. I couldn't find a single newspaper in this building. I actually went looking for one a few weeks ago because my daughter needed it for a paper mache project. And you would think in a newsroom there would be a single newspaper. There wasn't. So the internet has just changed everything, and it's become part of, now, I'm a news personality. Like, that's how they identify us. And the engagement you have engagement with viewers, and viewers feel like they know you and they're a part of you and you're a part of them. And, people always get a kick out of if they send me a message and during the newscast I respond, they're like, whoa, like, how did you do that? But it's just part of the job now. I was telling you, I put a tape together, an actual tape that I mailed out to get a job. Now everything's online.
Yeah.
You send a link to an employer, or employers are following potential people they want to hire. My boss follows me. They see what I'm doing and posting. There are consequences if you do crazy things. We've seen that play out. So social media, there's good. It connects you with things and people and story ideas and exposes you to everything. But there's also a great deal of responsibility that comes with it.
Definitely.
So for the younger people who are going into whatever field they're going into, just be aware, whatever you're posting, it might come back to bite you. And even if you post something and delete it, someone has
there
it somewhere.
Yeah.
No, the wake up call for me was, I remember at one of my old jobs, there was new people we were going to hire, and the first thing that my boss did was like look them up on Facebook. I was like, oh my god, like
that's the go-to.
Before LinkedIn.
Not even LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know. The first thing they did was Facebook and stuff. I was like, oh Jesus. But I could tell you this, like our generation, like I don't have the news on. I'm not watching the news all the time. I feel like the younger generation though, we're getting our news from Twitter, from other from social. It's a mix of places. But broadcast journalists, are you interested in the millennial Gen Z target audience? Are you guys adjusting for them, or is it working?
Yeah. Well, yes, but here's the thing. When it comes to TV ratings and stuff, like, they really care about women in the mid-age, because those are the women are the ones who spend money. So a lot of advertising and stuff is targeted towards that category.
Interesting.
Obviously when the news is happening live, people can stream it, and most people stream on their phone or computer. Also, I get a lot of stuff by just what people post. So I'll post sometimes stories. And if you notice on my social media, most of the time it's like personal things that I post because that's what people care about. And the truth is, in order to accumulate followers and to kind of appeal to a wide range of people, every time I post a selfie of myself, I secretly deep down hate it. Like I do. Like I don't like it. I'm like, oh. But I also know that people like it and people want that, and they want to see what you're wearing, and they want to see the behind the scenes stuff, and they want to see things that I would consider like, silly or frivolous, but sometimes you got to give a little bit of that too in order to maintain that audience or grow that audience. They love, personal things, but I did, and during the war, and even now, sometimes when I do Armenia stuff, I'll include that into my feed just because I want to give it some attention.
Sure.
So I know, like, it will get it attention. Otherwise, I kind of stick to my Insta stories have news stuff, but my actual feed, I kind of make it a little bit more personal.
Well, like you said, you're a TV personality, so that makes sense. You got a news
Yeah.
personality.
And sharing you, I guess, is part of it for sure.
But
and I will tell you, there's different audiences. Facebook audience is different. Instagram audience is different. Twitter audience is different. I've realized there's very different audiences.
Do you feel like focusing on niche subjects and like posting these short clips on the social media like works as well? Like
The sound bites.
Well, I was thinking like, doing something on the Armenian American community might actually have a really good trendiness or a shareability on social media, instead of focusing.
I think so.
Yeah. I definitely noticed.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like how we are now. Everything is, our attention span is shorter, right? We're like always on the go. So these little short headlines and clips, you kind of get caught up and have an understanding generally of what's going on. The problem is you don't really get that in-depth understanding of the subject matter.
Right.
Everything is so surface. But, I guess if you come across something that really sparks your interest, then you continue to pursue that and dig deeper.
Right.
So I don't know. It's like, it's hard. There's like a balance to it.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned also, for people aspiring to be in the media space, to be careful what they post, really for anyone. But I'm curious, Araksya, if there is any other piece of advice you would love to give to young Armenians or young people in general aspiring to get involved in the media space.
I think it's, when you think of media, don't just think of whoever's on TV. Like, that's just such a small aspect of it. It takes a huge team to put together what we do. So the behind the scenes are so important, and maybe even more important than on camera, because behind the scenes are where decisions are made. Behind the scenes are where a lot of power lies and influence lies. So, whether you're an editor, a photographer, a writer, a producer, a booker for a show, whatever it is, the more of us out there and in the media field, the more your voices, our voices will be heard. And that's just, that's true in any field, really. But it really, I think you got a good taste of that in the recent few months, right? In the past few months, like how important that is.
Yeah.
To have representation.
100%. I felt seen. It was so important. It meant so much, and I appreciate you so much, Araksya, for doing everything that you did. Really, it meant a lot, and I really think you had an impact and influence in the city and our community.
Oh, definitely. So thank you, Araksya, so much for chatting with us. I've learned so much in the last, 45 minutes. I'm probably going to start taking breaks from social media on the weekends.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have some wine.
When the news gets too much.
Yeah, when it gets too much. So, but Araksya, thank you so much.
But you know what? You also have to remind yourself that there's good in the world and there's good people, and just even you guys, having this interaction, it's nice. It's you feel supported. You also feel like we're all trying our way in our small way of trying to have our voices heard and being part of the bigger community. I think we all feel, at least I do, it's not about me, it's about something much greater and much bigger. And so that's a nice feeling.
I completely agree. I look around and I see all my friends and people like you doing amazing work, and that's how I keep myself optimistic and everything. So
certainly. It's motivating, it's heartwarming, and we have a lot of work to continue doing. So I'm excited to see.
Let's keep it going.
Exactly. Thank you so much,
Well,
Araksya.
stay in touch, you guys. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you, Araksya.
It actually helped me then. I had a stressful day.
Anytime you need, we're here. Anytime you need it.
And we're glad. But have a good day, Araksya. Good luck with the week and everything.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Haituk Talks,
the official podcast of the AYF West.
I'm Krista Marina Apardian.
And I'm Haig Minasyan.
And we're just a couple of Armenians
talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.